So welcome to everyone. On the screen, you see one of the most common quotes that you hear in business: work smarter, not harder. I would like it if you would use the chat box and if you would type some responses. What do you think when you hear this saying, work smarter, not harder? You can put your chat to everyone or to the organizers. Then I should see it.
Terri, please.
Mama, are you?
Yes, I can hear you.
Hear this saying. Is there a way? I don't want to take people off mute, but I just would like for them to be able to type things that I hear when I ask this question, what do you think when you hear work smarter, not harder? The most common responses that I hear from people are, yeah, right. How do you do that? Or, well, why don't you tell me something I don't know? Or, that's easier said than done. Or, what exactly does that mean? Smarter versus harder. Or, that's a different point of view. And some of you may be thinking or typing in the same kinds of answers. So our goal in this session is really to come up with a better definition of how to work smarter, not harder, and create something that is actually doable in our world as being a boss. So our objectives for today are to, number one, give you an awareness of your default behavior. Number two, give you an understanding that before you can change to doing something new, you have to first accept what you are doing and what's possible. And then third, how do you get accountability? Because when you change your behavior, it's easy to go back to doing the things that you were used to doing. So how do you create an environment that allows you to keep doing the things that you want to be doing? So by the end, if you are participating and thinking about the questions that I'm posing throughout, you will have a plan of action that you can implement in your world. So let's get started. Number one point is awareness of your default behavior. So in looking at these 4 questions on the screen, be writing down the answers. Can you answer these with accuracy? How aware are you of your normal day-to-day? So number 1, on average, how many times a day do you get tasked from a direct report to solve a crisis? When you do get asked to solve a crisis, what's your first response after they explain the problem? For some of you, do you even let them explain the problem? Which direct reports on your team bring you possible solutions when they bring you the problem? And lastly, which direct reports solve 80% or more of their problems on their own without even coming to you? And then as a follow-up to that, which ones, if they do that, how did they do that? But the main question that I really have for you in all 4 of these questions is, do you know? Can you answer these questions with accuracy? As we all know, when we go to plan a vacation, we can't get to the beach or the mountains or the new adventure or wherever it is we want a vacation before we know where we're starting. And without an awareness of your default behavior, without you being able to answer these questions, you too will have a very hard time getting to your destination. So take these questions, and if you're unsure that you're answering with accuracy, that will be your first assignment as you move forward into implementing your plan. So let's look at what are the causes of underperformance. There are three: rules, tools, and choices. So when it comes down to it, any underperformance on your team can be traced back to one or more of these didn't understand the norms, they didn't understand goals. Sometimes people just have a lack of understanding of what a company's true priorities are. For example, I'm sure that you're all familiar with Disneyland and Disney World. At Disneyland and in the Disney Corporation in general, they have 4 main goals: safety, courtesy, the show, and efficiency. And they have those goals in rank order. Number 1 is safety. Number 2 is courtesy. Number 3 is the show. And number 4 is efficiency. So if a Disney employee hears a scream while they're on duty doing their job in the amusement park, they are required to immediately run toward the scream to help. Now, this might sound like it makes perfect sense, and it does, except what if an employee was thinking, well, my goal is to show courtesy, or my goal is to perform the show. And so in their mind, they're thinking, I'm performing my show and somebody else will go take care of the scream. Imagine if every employee thought, I'm doing my other job and somebody else will take care of the scream. The reason Disney realized that they had to rank order their goals is so that there were no questions about the rules and the way to handle business. Almost every company that I go into to work with has some form of framed goal or values on the wall. Yet oftentimes when resources are short, those goals conflict with each other. So when employees don't perform, is it really because they're making the mistake? Or is it that they have one priority of a value or a goal and you have another priority or value of a goal? Think about how that might apply to your world. The second cause of underperformance is tools. If employees are not provided the tools, the training, the safe environment to practice and get experience and gain confidence, then they will underperform. So the biggest thing that I see when I'm working with companies is the mentality of, well, once they show us that they can do the job, then we'll invest training in them. If you don't invest training in them, or you don't hire people that already have this expertise and confidence, then they're never going to be able to do the job. I remember about a year ago, I was working with a company where there were a lot of millennials as employees. And the manager was so frustrated just by a very simple misstep that was happening with his team, as he would ask them to clean up at the end of the night, at the end of their shift. And he would continually find the floors to be dirty and things not clean. So when I came in, I got everyone together and I asked them, who does the cleaning in your household? And inevitably, everyone said, my parents. These people didn't even know how, these employees didn't even know how to mop a floor. They had never been trained on how to mop a floor. So the manager was asking them to do something that they had no experience doing. And he thought it was just something simple, but in reality, it was something very foreign. So think about, are you giving the tools and the experience, even for the simplest jobs, to your employees? And then we get to the last cause, choices. And as the picture shows you, which door do you choose? Which way do you want to go? Which path do you want to take? There are times when employees make choices to do differently than they've been instructed. And when they do that, they have their reasons. So they know the rules, they have the tools and the experience, but they still make a different choice. And the point of this slide really is almost every boss that I've worked with thinks that every issue of underperformance is caused by choices. And in reality, that is less than 20% of the cause for underperformance. The lack of a clear understanding of rules and priorities and the lack of experience, tools, training, and confidence are by far more than 80% of the causes of underperformance that I see. So again, think about how this applies to your world. Now let's move on to point number 2. What are your choices for new behavior options? Well, the first thing that you can do is what I call the pause. So when a direct report comes to you and asks you to solve a problem, pause. Create a space of time in between when your direct report asks for help and when you follow up. One of the bosses that I was coaching recently, we did an experiment. We got a sand timer, one of those times that you when you turn it over, the sand falls down, and it was about 5 minutes worth of sand on the timer. And so the instruction was, every time he had a direct report ask for his assistance, he would respond, I'm in the middle of something urgent. Let me follow up with you in 5 to 10 minutes. And then he would, as soon as they left his office, or if it was on the phone, as soon as they hung up, then he would turn the sand timer over. When the sand was through, then he would either call or go see that employee in person, and he would ask, okay, I'm here. What did you need? And just in that 5 minutes, he discovered that more than 80% of the time, the employee solved their problem. And he was hearing things like, oh, that's okay, I got it taken care of, or Amanda helped me, or some other employee helped, or I went and looked it up, or I was thinking that we probably were going to do it this way because that's how we did it before, so that's what I decided. Whatever it was, the reason that they were solving the problem, whether it was because they had actually looked it up, or because they had asked someone else for help, or because they just took that pause and allowed themselves the confidence to make a decision. Whatever the case, it worked. And the boss was really surprised at how few problems he really had to help his employees with. So think about this the next time that you just give an answer. What would that employee do if they had a little bit of time and they knew you were going to follow up with them, but maybe they would do the things that you're wanting them to do in the first place? The things that all the bosses I talk to complain to me about, like taking initiative or having confidence. So our second option is to delegate. Maybe you could assign that person to research. Maybe it is a question that isn't solvable or isn't something that they have done before. So instead of waiting the time, maybe you say, hey, this is something that you haven't had a lot of experience with. Why don't you look into X, Y, and Z? And then let's talk again in a day, in an hour, whatever time is appropriate for the amount of research you're asking and the time frame of the problem that needs to be addressed. Or maybe it's a mentorship. Think about the people on your team again, and who are solvers to the people that are still not yet confident. So mentors are different than coaches. Mentors help people with specific experience achieve specific goals. So if someone on your team is successful at something, how can you leverage their expertise to help out the rest of the team? Why does everything have to fall upon you as the boss? How can you leverage the rest of your team? And the third option is one we're going to explore a little more with the questions. So the third behavior option when you get a problem is to coach. So when the pause is not enough, or when the delegating you've done, or when you think the person has the information, but maybe they're just lacking the confidence or strength to buy into their own wisdom, that's when you're going to use questions and active listening to understand what's really in the way. And this, I guess, is really what I meant when I titled this webinar, Why Are Bosses Solving the Wrong Problems? Because when an employee comes to you and they're asking, how should I respond to a colleague? They're not really asking you, how should I respond to a colleague? They're really asking you, how do I make sure that this person will still be nice to me? How do I make sure that this person does what they're supposed to do? How do I make sure that this person understands the priorities of this project as they've been explained to me? Or any other number of personal, interpersonal skills. And until we actually address and understand the real problem, then we're going to keep spinning our wheels solving the wrong problems. So what are the questions that you can use when someone comes to you when the problem isn't really the one that they're asking you for? Let's dive into these. Number one, what's on your mind? Now, sometimes people will come and you won't have to actually ask this question. They'll just tell you this question. But what's interesting about what's on your mind, specifically said in this way, is that most often you will get just enough information and not too much or too little information. So when you ask someone, what's the problem? It's a different question that they're answering, but it's not giving you all the true answers, as in the example I stated before. If you ask someone what's the problem, they might say, well, I need to know how to respond to this email. But as we've discussed, that's not what the problem is. When you ask the question, what's on your mind, you might hear something like, well, so-and-so just sent me an email and they just said that they needed, and this was going to be delayed, and they had other priorities, and this project wasn't their priority, or any number of other answers. But you understand that they're going to be giving you more information than just simply telling you what their understanding of the problem is and how they think you want to hear it. What you really want to hear is what's on their mind and what's their obstacle. Now, sometimes that won't be enough. So you will use question number 2, and what else, as many times as you need to make sure that they've covered everything that they need to cover before you move into question 3. So it may sound something like, what's on your mind? Well, so-and-so just sent me an email, and then they said that they weren't going to be able to finish this, and they had other things, and then they're going to be delayed, and I'm just not sure how to respond. And what else? Well, and this is not the first time that they've done this, and I just don't know why they're asking me this right now, and why they keep giving me just 1 day's notice, and so then I don't have any time. And what else? Well, I think that's pretty much the gist of it. Okay, so use question number 2 as many times as you need to make sure that you're getting the whole picture. Then you move in to question number 3, and you take all of the information that they gave you in number 1 and number 2, and you really focus it and ask, what is the issue for you right now? So in our former example, I just got this email and they didn't do, and I don't know what to do, and they didn't give me very much notice. So the answer to this might be, the answer to question number 3 might be, what is the issue for you right now? That may be, well, I need to get this done without their help, or we're going to be late. So you see already, as we're going through these, that in the beginning, someone might say, well, I don't know how to respond to an email. But that's not the true issue. The true issue is, I need to get the task done that this person said that they're not going to do anymore. Or I need to get approval that it's okay that it's late if I have to wait for this other person to get it done. Now you're starting to get to the meat of solving the right problem. Question number 4, what do you want? This is where you find out if your employee wants to wait and let the project be delayed, or if the employee wants to take it upon themselves to do it, or if the employee wants to find someone else who might be able to help. But whatever the case, this is where you find out, how would this employee solve this if I wasn't around? What is it that they want to get done in this scenario? Question 5, how can I help? Now let me be clear. I just told you in the previous slide to delegate, that you don't have to take everything on yourself. So let me be clear. With question number 5, we are not guaranteeing that we will help. We are asking how we can help. Now, whether we will actually do what is being asked may or may not happen. We may use one of the other 2 techniques, delegating or pausing, instead of helping. But it depends upon what the person responds. If they respond, if you ask the question, how can I help? And they say, well, I just wanted to make sure it's okay that this was going to be a day late. Okay, it's all right. Or, well, how can I help? Well, can you write them an email? Well, no. So that may be something that you explore. Will another email help? It might be going back to, how am I going to, as the boss, can I really force someone to do something, depending upon the roles and the responsibilities? Or maybe they say, in answer to how can I help, well, can you talk to their boss and get them to understand? And maybe this is something that you could do. And maybe that's within the realm of what's acceptable in the way that your business works and your departments. Whatever they answer, though, at least you are offering the support, but you are not promising that you will do everything that they tell you that they need help with. And I know that you guys are going to have questions about all this once we can open up the floor for questions. So just write those down, because I'm eager to hear what you have to say about it. Question number 6. Once they decide what they're going to do, they have to think about how it plays into the bigger picture. So if you say yes to this, what will you have to say no to? This is a question that helps them understand that for everything that they say yes to, they're saying no to something else, and vice versa. When we say no to people, we're saying yes to other things. Yes and no are the same coin, just two different sides. So it's important to teach our employees that when you have limited resources, we do have to prioritize and we do have to make choices. And this goes back to, do they understand the number one cause of underperformance is rules? Do they have an understanding of the true priorities? And the final question, what's your main takeaway from our conversation? Now, this is a learning question, and this, you don't have to use it all the time. You can be the judge about how, how much on the scale of, learning for different issues, how valuable this question would be if they've come to some new insight, or if it is a pretty standard question or issue to be solved. But the way that you cement the coaching and the way that you make it clear to the employee what it is that they've learned is to ask them what their main takeaway is. That we're looking at with the email, the main takeaway might be, well, next time I'm going to ask them for the project to be done 2 days earlier, and that way, if it's late, it'll still be on time. Okay, great. That's great. That's your main takeaway, and that's going to help solve this problem for the future, or prevent the problem for the future. So based on our discussion so far, I'm curious to know, what's going to be your action plan? What of the new behavior options do you want to start taking? Do you want to be like my client who got the sand timer and worked on making sure that he paused every time he was asked to solve a problem by his direct reports? Or do you want to try on the 7 coaching questions with your employees, with your direct reports? Or have you already identified that there's someone on your team that could be a mentor to someone else? I'm eager to hear, when we get to the Q&A in just a moment, what action you would like to start taking. So what we've looked at is, hopefully you have been seeing that you've identified at least one of your direct reports that's a repeat offender, that keeps bringing problems for you to solve when those aren't the real problems. And then for accountability, my questions are, what is it going to take for you to start putting this behavior into place, default behavior? What support are you going to need in your environment to make the change in behavior so that you can start solving the right problems and your employees can do more of the heavy lifting? I do have a survey. If you would like to participate, there is a special offer if you do. And that's the survey code at the bottom. If you go to that on your browser, su.vc/WOPRQPAR. And I will definitely offer classroom facilitation, virtual facilitation, group or one-on-one coaching. And this is all my contact information that the Gulf Business Network Training Center has asked me to share with you. So, Umama, can we open it up to the questions that people have been asking?
Yes, thank you very much for such an engaging presentation. Folks, we are now open for the question answer. If you have any question, you can either put in the question box given in the end of the webinar console, or you could equally raise your hand by clicking on the hand icon available on the webinar console. So let me go straight to the questions. We have a question for you. When you hear the saying, work smarter, not harder, what do you think? Terry, can you hear me?
Can you hear now? Someone wants to know what I think?
Yes.
What I think of work smarter, not harder is that it's impossible. Okay. It's impossible to do without defining smarter and harder. And that is the inherent problem with that phrase is, what does smarter mean? What does harder mean? And by whose definition? Whose point of view? So that's why I asked the question back to everyone is, what does it mean to you? Before you have to define for yourself what smarter is. You have to define for yourself what harder is. What other questions did you get, or did you get any other responses? Did any of the participants put what they think when they hear that, Umama?
We have another one that is what. We have a question, Terry, for you that is, what are the reasons for underperformance?
Rules, tools, or choices? Or a combination of those three? If I go back, right? So the causes for underperformance are that someone doesn't understand the rules, and or they don't have the tools to do what they're being asked to do, or they've made another choice about what they should do.
Thank you, Terry. We have another one that is, how does the cultural misunderstanding leads to the underperformance?
You cut out a little, Umama. How does misunderstanding what?
How does the cultural misunderstanding lead to the underperformance?
I'm sorry. It still keeps cutting. Is there a way for you to type it into the chat box for me to see?
Sure, let me type here for you in the chat box.
Okay, thank you. How does the cultural misunderstanding? I see it. Thank you, Mama. Yes, exactly. That is a big issue. And there are experts. There are subject matter experts that their whole job is they consult on cultural norms. And this, I've seen this especially in the classes that I teach about negotiation skills. So when someone from one culture, let's say the United States, the American culture, where communication tends to be very direct and to the point, and that person is in a negotiation with an indie communication, may be at times indirect. So though that cultural difference can lead to big time misunderstandings, and with just people not wanting to work together. So with it's the thing with underperformance, when someone doesn't know the rules of a culture, then they will inevitably violate cultural norms. What else, Umama?
We have another one that is high performance.
How should one address and yep, okay, I see it. Thank you. Well, that's your choices. So this is where we get to our new behavior options. Pausing, delegating, coaching. Find out, diagnose what is the cause. If the cause of underperformance is rules, lack of understanding of the rules and priorities, then the task is to get those rules clear. Maybe assign, if the cause of underperformance is tools, training, lack of experience, then create ways for that person to get more training, to get more experience. It doesn't have to be formal training. The 70-10-10 rule is widely known as the most effective way that employees are trained. So 10% formal training, 70% on the job training, and 10% coaching and follow-up training from the boss. So I see the next question you posted, why do good employees quit their jobs? A lot of the times it's because they are not getting the recognition for whatever it is that they are doing. And when they're unable to feel like they're engaged and that they're making a difference and contributing to the whole, they quit. The other reason that I see is most common is because their needs are not getting met. There's a Harvard Business Review study. It's the #1 downloaded article from Harvard Business Review of all time. And the name of the article is, one more time, What Motivates Employees? And it really explains there are 3 main motivations for why employees either get satisfaction at a job or are dissatisfied at a job. And the main 3 reasons are connection, which is feeling like they're connected to other people and that they can collaborate. The second reason is competence. So feeling like your strengths are being used. And the third is autonomy and being able to do the job without being micromanaged. So different employees need one of those three more than others. And it's your role as the boss to understand what each one of your employees needs the most, and then to make sure that you create an environment where they can get that. So for example, for the employees that need connection, have you created opportunities for employees to collaborate and to build teamwork? For the competence, have you created opportunities for employees to compete safely and have a feeling of winning? Or have you created an environment where employees are being challenged and learning and improving their skills? And for the autonomy, are you creating an environment where employees can make a decision and I'll use the term I use very often, fail forward? In other words, do you allow your employees to make mistakes and learn from their mistakes? And if you're not doing those three, if you're not doing something in all of those three categories, then your good employees are going to leave.
Thank you for the
What else, Mama?
Thank you for the brief answer.